Hey, Money Rumblers. I'm Jacob. I'm a financial coach.
And I am Ariana, and I'm a financial coach. And welcome to
The Money Rumble.
Today we're going to be talking about why a $1,000 emergency fund is enough to start.
That's right.
I wanted to start by telling a little bit about myself and something that had happened to me a few years ago. I was on my way down to my parents' house, and they live about 6 hours away in Northern California. And we were driving and we got to Grants Pass, which is about halfway there. And we had stopped at a stoplight and smoke started pouring out from under the hood. I mean, just big billows of white smoke, right? That's not normal, right? Mechanic guy? That's not normal.
That's not normal.
So we pull over and something's obviously wrong with the radiator. I don't know cars, something with the radiator. So we had to have it towed. We found a mechanic, had to have it towed. Well, we didn't have AAA and we didn't have roadside assistance, so we knew that was going to cost us. We knew a mechanic was going to cost us, but we were so far from home. We were so far from my parents, like in this middle gray area. So we found a mechanic who had a radiator. Luckily, we had a Toyota Camry and not a Daewoo or some random, I don't know if you guys know what a Daewoo is, but we had one previously and you can't find parts for that. So we had a Toyota Camry. We found a mechanic who had a radiator and was willing and able to replace it that day. Well, that's not cheap, right?
No, it's not.
There's a third thing that added to the complication. We had friends with us, and my friend had 3 young children. So not only do we now have to have our radiator replaced and have the car towed, we also had to entertain 3 small children in Grants Pass in the heat of summer in midday. And they're just not, kids are not easy to entertain. So we took them to a park, we went swimming, but then of course, I'm hungry. And we didn't plan for that because we were going to be at my parents' house and they were going to feed us. So we had to take them out to lunch. And so long story long, it was like a $500 expense that we did not have an emergency fund for. And it ended up going on credit card, I'm pretty sure. So that was a lot of fun. It wasn't with him.
No, it wasn't with me. This was prior to her meeting me.
Yeah, because he would have checked the radiator before we left. Anyway, the radiator was cracked, it turned out, and had to replace the entire radiator. So that was a time that I needed an emergency fund and didn't have one.
And a story that I have, it's from way back when my girlfriend at the time was pregnant with my oldest. I was working at JCPenney part-time, so I didn't have any health insurance. And she was working as a waitress at a local steakhouse. So she didn't have any health insurance. And because we're living paycheck to paycheck, well, we didn't have an emergency fund. Well, one day I get a call of she's spotting blood. And that is very serious. And so I had to leave work. I rushed her to the ER and she got checked out and they were able to stop the bleeding. But we were also told that she could no longer work. She had to take it easy, lots of bed rests, and that means loss of income. Mm-hmm. And that meant more stress because loss of income, now all the bills are up to me to pay.
That's scary.
And that includes set new hospital bill. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So an emergency fund would have come in really handy. It would have relieved a lot of stress.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about why a $1,000 emergency fund is enough to start. Because most emergencies are about $1,000 or maybe a little bit less.
Right. It's challenging to get, but it's not impossible. Mm-hmm. It's obtainable, but not too overwhelming.
It's obtainable to to put aside about $1,000 in anywhere from 1 to 3 months just through budgeting. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
According to a study done in January of this year by CNBC, 12% of Americans cannot afford an emergency expense of $400. That's quite a few people.
Yeah.
That's 12% of Americans saying $400, I'm out, can't afford it, can't pay cash, can't put it on credit, I'm done.
Yeah.
That is heart-wrenching to be in a situation like that where $400 just wipes you out.
Scary, stressful, overwhelming, probably causing a lot of friction in your relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So the goal here with an emergency fund is to minimize the long-term damage that unexpected expenses might inflict on your finances. So even a small emergency fund like that $400 can save you from worst-case scenarios like borrowing money from family or getting a payday loan or pawning off your grandfather's pocket watch on Facebook Marketplace or a pawn shop because you need the money now.
We come up with a list of about 10 emergencies that cost about $1,000. A hot water heater. Hot water heater goes out, there's about $1,000 to fix or replace.
A broken car window or window on a house.
A garage door no longer wanting to open or it fell off the tracks.
I can't see. Servicing an aged HVAC system.
A trip to the emergency room or an urgent care.
This one got me, the emergency pet services. I didn't think of that. We have a young dog and she's fairly healthy, but we might want to
We know of some people with dogs that have health, or cats, that have health issues, and that can get expensive.
Thomas, I want to note that he's making some comments here about that he had an emergency fund one time and he used it all because he kept running into emergencies.
Well, that's what the emergency fund is for. You just have to remember to keep replenishing that emergency fund.
Yeah, because obviously you used it because you needed it. So yeah,
Right.
You have to keep replenishing that. I do think it's also interesting that sometimes I feel like the universe tests you. You get an emergency fund and the universe says, hey, is this an emergency? Hey, is this an emergency? And then it tests you because you're doing something new. And so then you keep having those emergencies and you have to keep pushing back and say, no, I'm keeping this emergency fund. I'm going to keep replenishing it no matter what. Right. I'm going to have this amount in my account because they do happen. And eventually
that is your buffer. Eventually you'll learn how to avoid emergencies.
Hopefully.
And you'll change that whole flow of energy to where now you have it, it's there, and it's less likely to go away.
So a few more things that cost under emergencies that cost under $1,000 are dental emergencies.
Morgan felt that one last year when she had a cracked tooth.
Yeah, ouch.
The next one, unexpected tax bills. I had it this year. My employer underkept how much I needed to take out for federal, and I ended up just barely scraping by. Thanks to my sister down in Texas, who's a tax professional. She helped me find the money I need to just not have to pay.
Yeah. Shout out to Carm. Thank you so
Carm,
much for helping.
You guys are awesome.
That.
Thank you so much.
Another thing that might be under $1,000 is unexpected travel. So when you have to go to a funeral or if you get stuck somewhere because of weather and you have to stay at a hotel room, I mean, depending on your airline, they don't always pay for that.
No, they don't. And finally, toddler and animal destruction of your house or your car.
Yeah.
Because we all know animals and kids, they get into stuff.
Yeah. I have a friend who used to keep her dogs when she left in the bathroom. And man, they just tore up the bathroom. And so she had to completely remodel it. I'm not sure if she spent less than $1,000, but I mean, yeah, that tore that bathroom up. So, yeah.
So why do you have to name it an emergency fund?
So I think it's so important to name it, because if it's not named, it becomes like a catch-all fund. And I used to do this where I had a savings, and it would become whatever convenient reason savings I wanted it to be, like clothing savings or travel savings or eating out, because my bucket, my category for eating out is low this month, but I still want to go out with my friends. And because I didn't name it emergency fund and label what an emergency was, I just kind of used it for whatever savings I wanted.
Yeah, that's exactly what ended up happening to us, because we didn't label that savings emergency fund. We did use it to just go out because we deserve it. Or, well, we do. It tended to keep things spicy by, hey, let's go to the coast. But that also meant it wasn't being saved for an emergency that would happen later.
Yeah.
Where do you store your emergency fund?
So you want to store your emergency fund in a savings account. That is, you're going to earmark it, emergency fund, in a separate savings account. If you can put it in a savings account that's not attached to your checking account, so it's a little bit more difficult to access, or takes 3 to 5 business days to transfer over, or you have to physically go into the bank to pull the money, that's going to make you think twice about, is this an emergency?
Thinking twice. Is is it unexpected? Is it mandatory that this gets taken care of?
Is it immediate?
Is it immediate?
Yeah.
Then, I mean, it has to meet these criteria to say this is an emergency. This has to get taken care of.
You still want it accessible. You don't want to invest it in a mutual fund. You want it accessible in a savings account that you can access, but you just don't want it to be too easy to access.
Right. Well, you can have it as cash as well. Just make sure you know exactly where you hid it and that no one else is going to find it.
Yeah, you might want to keep that in a safe spot. Know where the toddler can find. We covered that in our last couple of videos ago.
Right. There are local banks and online banks that have high interest savings account. Now, when I say high interest, I'm talking 2%, maybe 2.5, maybe 3%, not the 0.05 or 0.5.
Better than 0.5 or 0.05, but probably only as high as 5%. You'll be lucky if you can find one that's 5%.
Right. Now, I've noticed that there are a lot of local credit unions that are having higher interest savings accounts. So that would be a good place to start, is check out your local credit unions.
Yeah. So in the comments, guys, we want to challenge you to tell us about a time when you had a situation where either you had to use your emergency fund,
or a situation where you wish you had an emergency fund. Well, I think that's all we have for you guys today. So thank you for watching the Money Rumble. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you next time. Rumblers out.